This is the Data Download, your guide to upping your game when it comes to managing and accessing data in your organization. For Calibra, I'm your host, Jay Millicher. I've gotten to work with a bunch of telecommunication providers over the years, and I've kind of always found them to be pretty data literate. After all, a big part of their business is how they bill their customers. All of that's based on usage and consumption data, right? So given that, I thought it would be fun to get into more detail on the telco sector to see how all of that happens.
My name is Ram. I am the data officer at Colt. Been here at Colt for just over 5 years, but trying to kind of set up our entire data organization over the last 3 years or so. And I think we're just getting to a point where we are starting to see the benefits of what all we've been doing for the last couple of years. Challenges are ahead, but I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel right now.
This is Rohan Pawar. I am part of data office, work with Ram, and I lead the data governance and data architecture practice for Colt. So, been in the industry for more than 18 years in IT services, consulting, telecom, and predominantly in the data space in last 7 to 8 years. So, as part of the data governance and data architecture work, I've been working with Ram to set up the data office and imbibing that data culture for the organization.
So you lead your company Colt's data and governance program, right?
Yes, as part of the data governance program has many facets, but fundamentally the data governance initiatives and the various use cases are driven through the leadership of Ram and the data office support. Yeah.
If either of you can, why don't you describe your program, and maybe we can get into what data intelligence and data governance means within that program. So Ram, why don't you tell us about that program that you've begun at Colt Telecom?
It's sort of a radical new approach at Colt. So when our current CEO took over about 3 years back, one of our aims was to transform Colt into a data-driven organization, right? Of course, we were doing a lot of reporting, we're doing a lot of business intelligence and quite a bit of operational reporting per se. But we were not truly sort of leveraging the data we have in the time we have had. So we took this program with about 5 major aims, right? To sort of make sure that everybody in Colt can get data on demand. They can trust the data we sort of provide. And the data is sort of connected end to end, right? From one end of the business to the other end of the business. We essentially drive the entire culture of ownership of data across Colt and not just IT owning data. And also tap into the kind of innovation and trends which is happening in the data practice at the same time. So we essentially took these 5 pillars as our parts of our vision to sort of transform Colt into a data driven organization.
Oh, that's great. All right. So I was busily trying to take notes. I got 2 of them, I think. So one of your 5 principles was everyone gets access to data in some fashion, right? And I think another one was creating a culture of ownership of data throughout the business and, morphing from an IT ownership centric sort of thing, right? So it's really business ownership of data and the use of data. Did I get those 2 right?
Absolutely. You hit it on the head.
Oh, awesome. Cool. So help me with the other 3. What did I miss while I was taking those notes?
We also develop trust in data. So when you see a piece of data, you know it's right and you don't have to second guess it. And then data which is connected, right? So which means that the data flows across the entire process of business, right? For example, if you're taking the entire ordering process, right from the time the customer contacts us to the time we get the money from the customer, so there's a data flow seamlessly in there. Instead of doing it piecemeal or department by department, can essentially present a completely connected view of data.
Connected view of data flowing seamlessly. I really like how you phrase that. That's great.
And the last part is, you underpin everything with the latest trends in technology, right? Make sure that you have scalable technology underneath it. Bring in the latest innovations in data and in AI and in what kind of the practices we have in place, and make sure that there's very few people actually touching the data to give the business what they want. Bring in a lot more automation in the entire thing.
Oh, that's really interesting. So making sure there's few touch points as possible because you've been successful with automating some of these processes. Do I understand that right?
That's right. If you essentially have your technology and the underlying foundation set up the right way, nobody needs to touch the data to go change it. It should just flow through the entire process.
Oh, that's really cool. So Rohan, principle number 3 is your gig, right? Trust in data. Am I guessing right? So if we're
Absolutely.
talking about data intelligence and data governance, and your aim in the program is to drive trust and understanding, sounds like that's your job. You want to tell us about the program?
Absolutely, and it's trust in data is foundational aspect because while data is out there, deriving value out of data is only possible when people trust it, handle it in the way it should be to be handled. We'll have a lot of data in the organization, but the data, its form and the way it is transformed as an outcome as part of the processes which run end to end within the organization. And the processes are nothing but the activities we undertake, the departments undertake as part of their day-to-day operations, the activities they undertake, and as part of doing those activities the data gets transformed. So
Mm-hmm.
data in context is information ultimately. So getting the right context and the right data at the right time gives the right information to the stakeholders. So this is achieved by variety of activities. Now we didn't want to bring in that imbibe the trust across all the data sets to start with. We started with critical data entities across the key domains, and the key domains we started our journey was sales and marketing, finance, some of the service delivery and assurance areas. In procurement also some of the use cases we undertook. So for sales and marketing in particular, we understood what are the critical sub entities, data domains, what are the key processes they undertake,
Uh-huh.
so as to make sure that data or that critical data is in good shape, it is trusted, and what are the data quality challenges they face, what is the data anomalies which are prevalent, and how to correct that. And some of the key use cases which worked as one of the contract renewal processes. So we are in the B2B business, and our contracts span for 5-10 years, and the contract renewals take longer time, and if the data is incorrect in some of the contracts, then it was taking a longer time. Sometimes we had to give some credit notes back to to the customers. So we wanted to get the data in right good format, shape and form, and we did address that, and it ended up resulting into saving a lot of credit notes and faster contract renewals. So some of these activities we could achieve because we looked at the data right from the context perspective, processes perspective, the data quality issues, and then started correcting it, and also and making sure we govern it once it is corrected so that it doesn't go bad again. So all of that was so that was one of the initiative which we undertook.
That's an amazing example. All right. So Colt Telecom, a telecom company in the business to business sort of model. You're contract driven with your customers and clients, and you were recognizing a business problem, which was contract renewal times take a long time.
Yes.
And I think it sounds like you identified one of the reasons why that happens is you've got, let's say, data you can't trust that revolves around or is incorporated into these contracts that resulted in maybe contract violations, credits had to be issued, things like that. So in order to address that, you actually went all the way back to some sources, it sounds like, understood your data, your business processes that generate data. You said you made sure that that data that was generated, right, is high quality data.
Is high quality. The people, the teams who work with the data, who transform the data, who day to day do work on the data, what activities they undertook in order to transform the data, and then are they doing the right thing? So and then we address that. We look at the data. We got it corrected for the contract renewal process, and also gave feedbacks to the business teams, the various stakeholders, to change their processes, own the data, and so that it doesn't get bad.
Right. So the business teams that are generating data that then is used in these contracts, there's some responsibility within the business, right? As they follow those processes to create good data, right? High quality data, or at least correct it after the fact if something did go wrong. It sounds like you've repaired or let's say improved your contract renewal process, right? Have you measured? What was the before and after picture story there from a renewal time?
So we got it validated with our sales executives, and for a large contract of ours, and which is a huge customer, and they have, and across the globe we have so many contracts. For that particular contract, in particular, we pegged the value of credit note avoidance, and that was in the region of around 300k euros. Yeah, so that was for one contract.
That's a big deal. Just one contract. Yeah, that's a
And
big
the
deal.
work we did as part of that saving is applicable to many other customers also. So that value apparently we could not measure because that was all corrected in that point in time. But for a particular contract, we did measure it, and it's in the region of around 300k euros.
I don't know if you want, I don't know if you want to answer this question, but have you seen credits being issued? Is that decreasing as a result of this improved contract process and data management process? Are you seeing those business impacts result too?
At least for this particular problem, we could see that there's a declining trend of reduced credit notes issuance.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
just amazing. I love stories like that. That's great. So it just popped into my head. Telecommunication companies are in the business of data in many ways, right? Or you're laying cables, you're connecting endpoints, right? You're giving people access to internet or different types of connection methods, point to point and otherwise. But your whole billing model is all based on data, right? So it's you're counting packets, right? and you're billing based on that or some other factors, right? So now this 5-year program, Ram, that you've really begun here to drive a data-driven culture, what was natural? I would imagine a lot of what you're trying to do should come naturally at a company like Colt, being in the business that you're in. How has this evolved as in these past 5 years with that in mind?
So telecom companies deal with a lot of data, absolutely, right? But telecom companies are also challenged with data in multiple different forms.
Okay.
We handle probably billions and billions of bytes a day, literally in terms of data. You can't talk about network monitoring, you talk about billing, you talk about even a single cent of a billing is data for us, right? The challenge is that telecom technology has evolved over the last so many years. And if you look at some countries and some places, you still are using technology which is 20, 30 years old. And they don't sort of give you the same sort of data like the modern ones right now. So the biggest challenge for telecom companies is also data, because data exists in so many different forms in there, right? And that is one of the things which I think hamper a lot of companies from being able to monetize the data they have and drive value out of data. And that's why this program becomes more important. Let's at least take the low hanging fruit and then try to sort of derive value out of it before we go off into the networking areas where the data is much more difficult to sort of retrieve. It's full of legacy technology challenges, right? And in a lot of cases, you will find technology of multiple generations trying to work together. And that creates its own challenges in data flowing between them.
Once you, let's say, began to develop this program to fix contract renewal times, right, and improve, well, your entire contract management process, your credit management process, and things like that, that's a big success. And you started with data. I think you said you wanted to start in key business areas. You called them domains or data domains, finance and sales, right? Show me the money, right? So it's when you start with the money, you're going to get some traction, right? So was the money aspect intentional, right? Fixing those problems that were really visible, and how does that help with let's say some of your next projects that you began after that?
So I'll sort of turn this question on its head a little bit more, right? So for us, sales was always a higher priority, and customer experience was a much more higher priority than actually going down into finance. Finance is one case which Rohan we started off with. But that was also had a sales and a customer experience impact on it, literally, right? Because, see, usually for that particular customer, we handle thousands of contracts in a year. And the sooner we can sort of remove that pain from the customer, we're going to close out contracting process faster. Of course, finance benefits out of it because we don't issue credit notes out of it, right? So sales is always going to be a first priority. How can I increase my customer experience? How can I increase my revenues or my bookings? How can I sort of make sure that I can predict, for example, if I'm going to win the next opportunity or a lead or not, right? So a lot of our focus has been on sales to try to sort of make sure that we enable them to go and sell better, to convert leads better, because then that's automatically will lead to the money at some point of time. Right?
Beautiful, yeah, right.
That's another way
Right.
of looking at it to an extent, and this is much more easier thing because, I mean, if you please the customer, you get more revenue out of it.
So I'm hearing you say your first focus was keeping the money you already made, and your second focus is making more money.
Absolutely. Always, right?
Got it. Well done. I love it. So you described some technical challenges that you've had to navigate. I think a driving North Star has been quality of data so that people can trust it, right? And that was one of the technical challenges. Let's get into the org itself, where people on board with this from the beginning? Did you have to convince people to do anything differently? One of your pillars was driving, let's say, ownership of data throughout the business. So what kinds of, let's say, enthusiasm was there? Maybe were there pockets of resistance? How did you navigate that aspect of beginning this program?
We have mixed results in that case, right? There are some business functions which are more than eager to sort of work with us, right? Like the example Rohan mentioned, right? Sales is always more than happy to sort of work with us to an extent per se, right? But there are places where, I mean, it is a little more harder set, right? And the whole thing comes to sort of changing the culture of how people think they interact with data and their own data, right? Getting the people to think that they own the data is the biggest challenge we face. The moment that conversation happens and that what do you say buy-in is there, then governance becomes easy. So that is where I think the biggest challenge for us lies, literally to have people sort of appreciate that they own the data in place, and we are there to help them own the data. But once they realize that they own the data, then the conversations become much more easier. So changing the culture becomes the biggest challenge. And see, we are a global company. You have people from multiple countries sitting in there. Right? So you're going to always have different nuances in trying to deal with it.
So teach us all, how did you get folks across that threshold to want to take on that real responsibility and accountability for owning their business data? We're all eager to learn this one.
Basically, what we wanted to do, we started. One is the data understanding, and we very well acknowledged that each of our departments within code, the domains, what we call them, there were people who understand that data more than data office themselves, right? So somebody in the marketing department understand marketing data better than us. Somebody in finance understand finance data better than us. So we started with this construct of data champions, and ultimately what these people are. Fundamentally, they perform the data stewardship job. We spoke to the respective department VPs, the senior management, and we got the nominations for these data champions who could work with data office and help understand the critical data from each of the domains. What is the data we should be focusing on? What are the key data challenges? And they would help us articulate or help us peg the data ownerships within the department. So finance, sales marketing has a lot of data. Now, it's such a huge department spread across various geographies. We wanted representation from that department, one person or a couple of people who act as data champions. They make sense of that data better than of within the department, and they help us pick the data ownerships. So that articulation was the first step with the help of their senior management, and then we got them on board as part of the data governance council. We created a council, and then they help us to understand the data better in their department. So that was the first step. And then we created this various other roles. Business owner will be the senior management who give the strategic direction and help mitigate, give the financial backing in some various programs. And then the data champions who will work with data office and the respective departments. Then comes the data custodians. So this data resides in IT applications, and IT applications are the custodians where the data resides. They are not necessarily the data owners, but they make sure the data is available, accessible, secure, and be available to the respective stakeholders who are authorized to use the data. So the IT custodians, and then obviously the data officers, data architects, we are the enablers, and we work with the data security and the data protection team. So we created a council of people who work, who know their responsibilities. That was the first rollout we did. And then data design was introduced in every program, any larger program or smaller program we undertake. We imbibe or we enforce the data design and data governance constructs right from the onset of the program. Earlier, before data office was formed, data design was the afterthought. Only when the data is to go bad, then they should think about data design. But right from the onset, we started creating data models, and then we created a lot of data models, logical model, conceptual models to make sense out of the data, and with taking the help of the data champions. And for every program, we end up creating the as is models, the to be models, the data ownerships agreements with the help of data champions, and then to go about doing the design, be it the IT design, technology design, or whatever, as part of the SDLC life cycle, software development life cycle, be it agile or waterfall methodology. So that makes sure that we have the governance, protection, all of the data ownership considerations agreed, or at least the decisions are open. We bring it to the table, so that then when the program goes live, there are very clear cut agreements. Race is defined as who's going to own it when the solution goes live. So data is not an aftermath.
Wow, there's a lot there. So I want to clarify one thing so I understand. Are you coming from a place where the actual technical management of data, the hands-on management of data, is that a central sort of function within your team or some central IT team, or?
We have a data platform which helps us envisage the data, process structured, unstructured, semi-structured data, and we have a data warehouse platform, HANA platform, and now we're a cloud-based GCP platform. So that helps us to visualize and process a variety of data. Having said that, we also work with the various operational systems IT team, where the data is going to reside as well. So it's a combination. And then we have Colibra as well for the data governance as a central data governance platform. So we have now harvested more than 1,800 operational systems metadata into Colibra application. So that gives us the starting point to peg the ownership. So we present the metadata to the stakeholders and then peg the ownerships there. That happens to be our starting point.
I think we sort of look at Colibra as the interface, right, between the business data owners and the technology owners to an extent, right? Otherwise, I mean, the technology platform is typically very, very technology. I don't understand a lot of it myself, right? To be very, very honest. But Colibra makes it easier for us to sort of relate what data we have since it's sitting inside for example, our data lake.
Yeah.
So that we think will drive a lot more ownership, and people will not be as afraid of data as they were previously.
So as you described this transformation for ownership and accountability and all of that, I think you said you started with sort of a low barrier of entry for folks in the business to take that ownership. You didn't even call it ownership, right? You called it champions, to really just explain their data, right? And by starting that process of getting folks used to explaining their data, I imagine you're uncovering problems and challenges with quality issues and things like that. As you go, you're able to make lots of improvements. And I think it sounds like as you establish that championship, right, across these different business areas, it probably felt natural that they owned those data sets. And, why should that be? Why should that be owned by some central team when they can actually take ownership? So they almost, I'm imagining they kind of wanted to take that ownership once this was all rolling along, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. And because they wanted an interface, they wanted somebody to hear to it. In lot many cases, the data champions were so excited to work with us, to explain what the real challenges are. And then when we try to resolve the challenges, we also the idea of data ownership was very important, because so many data quality issues were identified. The needle was not moving because of the data ownership issues. Nobody or very few people in the support team, the IT team, or the data quality team, we were really struggling to know whom to reach out to get the resolution. And then that's where the construct of ownership really helped, wherein the data champion said, okay, we think for this particular issue or this kind of issues, this is the right people or this is the right team to reach out to. And that helped move forward to get the issues resolved.
Right. And I think you were saying that by incorporating those operational IT teams for those systems, they would then take their own level of ownership on improving the quality, right? Fixing quality issues that were identified. So you're in a much more proactive mode now. This is just a great story. Sounds also scalable, sustainable, et cetera, because it isn't just one central team doing all things. You've really mapped out who's going to take the ball and move with it along the way, yeah? So Ram, I want to get into some more of the, let's say, the value proposition of doing all of this. This is a great story. You talked about already improving, let's say, retention of money, right, by improving your contract process and credit management and all of that. Certainly, this is a long part of the journey. Where do you think it's going to drive more value and also in a measurable sense? What's your thinking on that? I imagine that there's a long cycle ahead of driving that value that way.
Going back to how we drive value propositions as a whole, a lot of what Rohan talked about is to build that foundations to drive value out of it, right? See, for example, if you are able to make a positive change in culture, right, it will drive better data governance, which means that they will start using data the right way, putting data in the right way, which sort of automatically improves your quality on an ongoing basis. The moment it starts improving quality on an ongoing basis, right, the trust in data automatically will improve. Mm-hmm. Then you can start putting insights together using any of the latest generative AI models, for example, ChatGPT or Google or whatever comes in, right? And people will start believing the data they see. And that's where the value proposition comes. I mean, what we are doing on a lot of the foundation sometimes may look very tedious because nobody really knows where it's going and how it's linked to it. But everything goes back to the point of being, if I can provide data on demand, which means that if my CEO wants a piece of data and she can query a Google type search bar and get an answer and believe the data, that's where my value proposition lies.
Let's talk about use cases. So that's a, let's say, a business process, and that your CEO wants to understand something so that I think they can make a decision in a reasonable amount of time. Are there other use cases that maybe come to mind? Again, being kind of a data company already, do you see creating commercial data products that your customers or partners could get value out of? Do you see an AI project on the forefront where that can become a product itself for you? What types of use cases come to mind to make use of data now that you're data-driven, trustworthy, high quality, efficient business process and all of that with a platform? Sky's the limit, right? What types of use cases can we think of from Colt?
And these use cases are varied, right? And in telecom company, there's a lot of places for these use cases. So we are working with a couple of customers to provide them anomaly detection. So we sell a lot of voice numbers, right? And customers use them. And like any phone or any data, there'll be glitches. There'll be drops, call drops, voice drops, everything in there, right? So we essentially are able to provide customers a list of all the anomalies and why we think it happened through AI models specifically, right? And that's a place where we are essentially trying to do churn data at scale, and be able to sort of give them a set of, what do you say, anomaly, why the anomalies happened, what numbers it happened at, why did it happen at a particular point of time. This is something we essentially can monetize. See, for example, for premium customers, it can be a selling point. For other customers or resellers, for example, who sell those numbers to somebody else, it can be something we can monetize with them so that they can go and have a better customer experience with those folks.
I see, right? Because you're B2B. So what you're saying is you're thinking about data products that could be commercialized for those customers. You called it anomaly detection around their operations for their clients, their customers, right? So they can use this data that you provide them as a value add for their own operations with their own clients. Yeah.
That's one, yeah. And we also provide a lot of APIs for customers to buy off us, right? APIs regarding their usage of code, their billing, their online stuff. They can also query and our prices, for example, right? So there's a bunch of APIs we provide, and all of this is possible because we have a much more automated data platform sitting underneath a lot of our applications specifically, right? So these are areas which we can, by selling or having customers or other vendors subscribing to our APIs, another data monetization area for us to sort of look at.
Yeah, and just to add, to give an example, what just Ram articulated. So we in the partnership. So we work with a lot of partnerships in our business and the entire value chain. You can see, like any other telco, we have a lot of partners, and for the success of our success is also dependent on our vendor success. So we have these on-demand services, right, where we give a lot of telco services, which is going towards one-touch provisioning, one-touch ordering, and instead of larger lead time, cycle time, so 30, 90-day cycle time of delivering the services, we're trying to reduce that cycle so that we deliver the services, improve customer experience, and be able to generate revenue faster. Now, on-demand services has these APIs where one of these on-demand APIs is where we not only share our service availability locations on demand to the customer, and then also in some of the mature vendors and suppliers, if they wish to raise tickets, and from the assurance side of things, earlier instead of raising tickets and then we taking time to raise the tickets, we have exposed APIs where they click of a button where they request us, and the API and the tickets are generated, and the ticket is logged at our end. So instead of no telecalling, no email business and all that, so that way our engineers can directly work on it and go about resolving the services. So just to improve customer experience end to end. So those are some of the on-demand APIs, and then sustainability side of things also is there. So we're digitizing a lot of our carbon data credits, how much energy we spent, we are doing, and we have a lot of equipments spread across the regions we operate, and a lot of infrastructure is there. So reducing the carbon footprint, first of all capturing it. So digitizing that entire thing was also part of the data collection, and as part of our data driven initiatives we've undertaken.
So you blasted a whole lot out there, right? So you're
No, I mean, if you start talking about use cases, we can keep on listing. There's a lot of things. We work with HR, we work with people, we can do customer voice analysis.
Supply chain, procurement, churn analysis, marketing segmentation.
So look, you with a great foundation built on trust, built on let's say distributed ownership of data and responsibilities around your business that gives you scale, trust, sustainability, et cetera. It really does open up the floodgates, Ram, for use case opportunities to get value from data. I think you listed a good 10 opportunities that you're exploring or succeeding at already. And I just want to say congrats. I think this is a tremendous success story. I'm so excited to hear it and learn from you along the way. You said you've been there 5 years. This is past 3 years you've really been building this up. So none of what you just described is free or easy or fast, right? Right. So tell us a little bit more about some of the journey. Like how do you select the investments to make in people, process, and technology to make this 3-year journey successful as you're describing it? What goes into budgeting and then executing on those things? Like give us some insight into that.
One of the first things with Rohan I did, and Rohan incidentally was one of our first people on board into this new plan, right? So me and Rohan sat and worked out a roadmap, literally saying what are the building blocks to get to where we want. And the first thing we always started with was the data foundations, because without foundations, we really will not get there. So our data strategy started with foundations per se, and the first 2 years focus was only putting the foundations together, and then sort of fix some of the critical areas as and when it was highlighted back from the business, right? It wasn't always an easy journey because you're investing about $1 million or 2 every year on the entire data platform, and everybody wants to see results, right? So keeping everybody warm, making sure that we essentially are able to communicate the value we're going to get at the end of 3 to 5 years it's still the biggest challenge for us in a lot of areas, because the amount of work it goes to build the foundation is key. It needs patience to an extent. So that is where I think our biggest time maintain is more like not only building foundations, but making sure people understand why we are doing this.
Were you able to drive any like small wins, quick wins, kind of incrementally along the way, telling people to be patient and wait for 2 years?
No, we did a lot of these small ones, like the contract ones, these credit notes ones Rohan said was one of the first thing we did, right? We are essentially doing a lot of regulatory reporting kind of requirements, which is much more faster, right? We are doing some finance visibility reporting, for example, a view of our entire capital expenditure, right? So we're doing a lot of these small things which people can see, and then they become our ambassadors to an extent, right? We are not doing, for example, a mammoth 2-year transformation to drive value. We're doing a lot of point solutions, and we'll always be doing point solutions, because that's where I think the beauty of data lies is you can start driving insights even with a small amount of data in there. It doesn't need to take 6 months to drive a project. You can get results in 2 to 3 weeks. The moment you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and then just to add, a lot of foundational activities are now being used to derive more value. Give some examples. Voice area. So we had a lot of voice data quality issues, and we are in the voice business. We sell wholesale voice, SIP trunking, and voice line V, various voice products to various for resellers and wholesalers who further sell it there. So we were facing issues of voice number allocation, and a lot of data issues were there. So we addressed that, and not only we addressed it, we devised a process, we devised the operating model for making it right all the time. So that kind of value add we did it. The other example is the data models we churned out. So in last 2 years, we've churned out more than 30-40 data models of how data is articulated, how data is built across domains, and that is helping in some of our RFPs when we bid to our customers. The customers are becoming data centric as well. So they sometimes ask us, how my data will be organized, how are you handling my data, and that's where we are sharing some of these models to win contracts. GDPR and some of the data protection initiatives as well. So we have, as a company, we make every effort to comply, not only comply but be compliant all the time, and to all the regulations. The authorities put it, and because being a telco, we have to do that. we've started one use case and one of the initiative with the data protection team. So the personal data, sensitive personal data, what are the definitions, which personal data, how do we manage, handle, and that information is all being very well formulated, and we're ready for the audit purposes all the time. So that is another use case which you're working. So there's incremental value over the foundational work which is already happening. It's not that we're waiting for a big bang something to happen, as point solutions are also yielding the efforts, yielding the value.
Right. And each incremental win, it sounds like you're able to, because you've approached this foundation first, you're able to reuse and reuse and reuse and reuse each success in a more amplified way, which exponentially drives more value. This is just, again, I'll just repeat, what a great success story. Trust. It can take a lot to build trust. That goes for relationships, right? And throughout business, and here too, trust in data. It takes discipline and keen focus on your data practices and processes to ingrain quality. And what's the reward of that? It's value. The value from trust in your data returns faster business processes, right? In Colt's case, that's faster contract renewal timeframes. Actually, it's even directly benefiting contracts themselves by reducing the amount of credits that they had to issue to their clients. For them, it's literally money in the bank. That is the value of trust in your data. So what goes into that discipline and focus that instills trust? I'm hearing two key things: data ownership and technology modernization, right? And the enablement that comes along with that. As businesses evolve over time, lots of systems get put in place, right? We all know that. All sorts of different business processes with data all over the place. Modernizing your tech stack and even operational systems, leveraging APIs to connect the dots, it all points to being deliberate and intentional and collaborative across the many teams that manage these technologies, ultimately to create a robust and connected infrastructure. All of this is foundational to providing trustworthy data and ownership. Those teams that manage the tech and the business processes too, all of those things generate our organization's data. It's really important to establish who is responsible for which parts, right? So that they can participate in all of that connectedness. We all rely on each other across our businesses, right? And Colt showed us a great example of how to cultivate those champions of collaboration within different business areas, leveraging and promoting their data literacy and establishing data ownership and responsibilities clearly. That's the key to driving trust then, right? Central data teams are becoming enablers, providing a kind of connective tissue. Those central teams, we want to foster collaboration around data. And we can break down silos and really unlock the value of data for our organizations. That's the moral of the story for me.